A question of the heart. Does God really care about church? Have you ever sat in a pew, hymn book open, and wondered, does God really care about this? It's a question that has echoed through the halls of faith for centuries. We gather, we sing, we listen. But does it truly matter to God? Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 11 tells us, He hath made everything beautiful in His time. Also He hath set the world in their heart, so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. God works in mysterious ways, His plans often hidden from our understanding. And in Romans chapter 11, verse 33, we are reminded of the vastness of God's wisdom, or the depth of the riches, both of the wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable are His judgments and His ways past finding out. If we struggle to grasp the depths of God's wisdom, how can we fully comprehend His view of the church? This exploration delves into the heart of this question. Does God care about steeples and stained glass? Or is His focus on something deeper, something more profound? Let's journey together and seek His heart. The ritual and the reality. Are we missing the point? Church is often filled with rituals and routines, Sunday services, Bible studies, potlucks, and committees. The rhythm of church life is familiar to many, but amidst the structure, are we losing sight of the heart of worship? Isaiah chapter 1 verse 13 warns against empty rituals. Bring no more vain oblations. Incense is an abomination unto me. The new moons and Sabbaths, the calling of assemblies, I cannot away with. It is iniquity. Even the solemn meeting. God desires sincere worship, not empty gestures. Similarly, Matthew chapter 15, verse 9, cautions against prioritizing human tradition over God's commands. But in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Are we so focused on the how of church that we neglect the why? It's a question worth pondering. Are we truly seeking God in our services and programs? Or have we reduced faith to a checklist of religious duties? The answer, my friend, lies not in the outward form, but in the inward posture of our hearts. Going through the motions when church becomes routine. We've all experienced it. That feeling of going through the motions at church. The service becomes predictable, the songs familiar, and our presence perfunctory. But what happens when our hearts are no longer engaged? Amos chapter 5 verse 21 speaks directly to this. I despise your feast days, and I will not smell in your solemn assemblies. God desires our genuine presence, not empty observance. Revelation chapter 3 verse 16 delivers a sobering message to the lukewarm. So then, because thou art lukewarm, and neither cold nor hot, I will spew thee out of my mouth. Complacency in our faith grieves the heart of God. Let us not mistake routine for reverence or familiarity for intimacy. May our worship be a vibrant expression of our love for God, not a rote performance devoid of passion. A disconnected heart seeking God in the midst of ritual. Ironically, we can feel most distant from God in the very place meant for connection. The hymns wash over us, the sermon fades into the background, and a sense of spiritual isolation settles in. The psalmist cries out in Psalm 22, verse 1, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Why art thou so far from helping me, and from the words of my roaring? Even in the midst of religious observance, we can feel alone in our struggles. Jesus Himself on the cross, uttered words of profound desolation. And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani? That is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Matthew 27, verse 46. If even Christ experienced spiritual abandonment, how can we expect to navigate our faith journeys without moments of doubt and disconnect? The key is to remember that even in our darkest moments, God is present. He hears our cries, even when our voices are muted by despair. Our job is not to manufacture an emotional high, but to simply show up, be honest with our struggles, and trust in His unwavering presence. Section 5. Bridge or barrier. How church can hinder our connection with God. Church is meant to be a bridge to God, a place where we draw near to Him and experience His presence. But what happens when the very structure designed to connect us becomes a barrier instead? Isaiah 29, verse 13, paints a poignant picture of superficial worship. Wherefore the Lord said, Forasmuch as this people draw near me with their mouth, and with their lips do honor me, but have removed their heart far from me, and their fear toward me is taught by the precept of men. We can go through the motions of religion without ever truly engaging our hearts. Matthew 15, verse 8, echoes this sentiment. This people draweth nigh unto me with their mouth, and honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. God desires authenticity, not empty gestures. When rules and regulations, traditions and expectations become more important than genuine connection with God and compassionate love for others, the church risks becoming a barrier rather than a bridge. It's time to examine our hearts and ensure that our pursuit of God is not hindered by the very structures meant to facilitate it. Section 6. Scars of disillusionment, when church hurts instead of heals. Sadly, many carry wounds inflicted by the church. Hypocrisy, judgment, and legalism can leave lasting scars, causing some to question the validity of faith itself. Jeremiah 14:10 speaks of God's disappointment with His people. Thus saith the Lord unto this people, thus have they loved to wander, they have not refrained their feet. Therefore the Lord doth not accept them. He will now remember their iniquity and visit their sins. When we stray from God's heart, our actions have consequences. 2 Timothy 4:3-4 warns of a time when people will reject sound doctrine. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine. But after their own lusts shall they heap to themselves teachers having itching ears, and they shall turn away their ears from the truth, and shall be turned unto fables. It's crucial to remember that the church is made up of imperfect people, capable of causing both incredible good and heartbreaking harm. If you've been hurt by the church, please know that God sees your pain and offers healing and restoration. Don't let the actions of a few tarnish the love and grace of our Savior.